Welcome back, everyone. I'm Carrington-Russell, Australian award-winning author of Kick Butt Heroines and Dark Romantic Worlds, and I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking to a Wall Street Journal, USA Today, number one Amazon and number one Apple best-selling author who's known for writing flawed characters looking for love. We are talking to the one and only Charity Ferrell. How are you today?
I am good. How are you?
I'm really good, and I'm so excited to have you on because I have so many questions for you. And as we're recording now, you are only 4 hours away from your new release. How are you feeling?
Good, good, nervous, but ready. I'm ready. I just want to get it out to the world.
Do you think it ever changes no matter how many books you publish? Do you think it ever gets easier?
I don't. I feel like the more that I release, the more I'm like, okay, is this gonna like live up to what people are expecting of me? So with my first book, I was like, oh, nobody's gonna read it. And then now it's okay, people are reading my books and I don't want to let them down. And so I think that is the only really aspect I think that's different with each release. And it's the first of a new series. So it kind of starts on this is where people go first when they start a new series. They want to like book one. So, but yeah, I think I'm good.
We'll start talking about the new release shortly, but I would love if you could take me back to the start. So, what was book one? What year was that? And how did you find writing for the first time? And when did you notice a snowball effect in your career?
So I was always like, oh, one of these days I'm going to write a book, and that was really before self-publishing was really a thing. And then I would read all the time, like a book a day. And my partner, he works a lot. And so sometimes I would just hang out in his office and read. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to write a book, whether or not I do anything with it. I have this idea and I'm going to write it and we'll see how it goes. So I did that and I finished it. And then this was like 10 years ago. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, okay, I know I need to hire an editor. And I think I did a blog tour. But other than that, I kind of just uploaded it and I was okay, it's uploaded. I didn't run any ads. I didn't do anything. I just let it like float on Amazon. And then so I think that was like the first book baby. And so for a while I just would write a book when I felt like it and just put it on Amazon. And I didn't really expect much out of it. And I had readers and stuff like that, but I didn't run ads. And then I think I started a new small town series and I was like, you know what, maybe I'm gonna like put a little bit more into this. And so that's what I did. And it kind of snowballed into me treating it more of a business and not so much a hobby, where I think it started to become more of a business and a career.
And what year was that the small town series came out?
That was 2017 was when the first book of The Small Town came out.
Very different time. So we weren't really dependent on ads and things such as like that. There weren't as many resources, and it very much was a sort of, oh, it's out there, cool, good on me, good job.
Yeah.
And but the industry has changed so much over those years. Even 2017, as you said, you started looking at it seriously. To today, we're very much like we're dependent on social media such as TikTok and advertising and things like that. So I'm glad you had that gradual incline to it because it can be very overwhelming as well when you do shift into that business mindset. We don't ordinarily know all the things that we have to do. So you're just like, wow, this is a whole new world. What do you think the biggest sort of learning lesson, I guess, was for you, the biggest hurdle that you had to overcome?
I think keeping up with trends and seeing that things change. Like when 2017, you could do a release party and you could go into groups, and all of those worked. And that was like your way of getting out there. And now you don't really see those. anymore. And it's more, like you said, ads and TikTok and social media. So I think really just seeing how everything has changed. I don't think Amazon ads were a thing really then. And now you have to run Amazon ads pretty much. So I think keeping up with all of the changes that happen is, I think, the best thing you can do, but also the hardest part that you can do.
100%, especially when there's so many different opinions out there as well as to what you should do to scale up. It becomes very, very questionable at times. You're like, I'm doing everything, I promise.
And then it all changes the next day.
Let's talk about Simple Sacrifice then. So it is book one in the Lucky King series, which is super exciting. So how was your experience writing this book? And let us know a little bit about it.
So it's a spinoff from my last series. So I had a series, a Mafia series come out, and it was 3 books. And so this is a spinoff of that series. This book, I think, kind of how I was saying, like, oh, the more books that you release, the more you kind of feel like you have a little bit more pressure. So this book was a little different-ish because even though I always have drafts. Like I never can sit down and write one draft. Never going to happen. I at least have 40,000 words that I've deleted to, like, I have draft one, draft two, draft three. And my poor assistant, she reads all. But I think this was the most drafts that I've had. I was on draft 8 of this one. And so it was very much a labor of love, I think, because I liked this character so much in the last book of the last series that I was like, I want your book to be so good. And so I think that was a big aspect of it, that it was a little bit more difficult for me to write, but I was done earlier than I planned to. So I was like, oh, I hit the 4 deadline, but I also feel like this book took a lot more out of me.
I'm kind of curious about this process because immediately my marketing brain goes off and it's just like, but do you use those, like, are those bonus chapters, or like where are you using those? But how do you, I guess, are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? How do you get to the point where you're like, I'm really not satisfied with where this is? Do you do a total rewrite, or are you still grabbing bits out of the original draft?
So I grab bits out of them. My biggest rewrites are usually chapter one. Chapter one is because I'm huge on chapter one, because if you don't grab somebody by that first page or that first chapter, you're most likely not going to get them to keep reading. That isn't all the time, but in my experience, when I grab a book, if I'm not within the first chapter, I'm kind of, okay, maybe this isn't the book for me. So I think that is the chapter that I rewrite the most. And then I kind of grab bits and pieces. Okay, this kind of works now, this doesn't. And then I go back and forth between pantsing and plotting. I'll plot and I'll have a whole notebook, and then it ends up changing. So I think I like go both ways. I'm like, okay, I'll plot a little bit, but then I'll pants over here too. So it really depends on the book too. My small towns, I was easier at plotting than it is with the mafia ones, because I feel like as I'm writing, I'm like, okay, I can make him a little crazier. So let me just add this in here.
I kind of love that you have allowed yourself to in your career to have multiple genres as well, because it often is a discussion, as to the whole stay in your genre lane and things like that. So I'm really glad that you have that flexibility as well. Have you found that that has impacted like your branding or the way that you can market yourself in any way?
I hear that a lot. People say stay on brand, stay on brand, stay on brand. Even the people that I work with, they're like, you should probably stay on brand. But I am like, if I am not fully immersed into the story, I can't write it. I absolutely can't do it. And I can't just write something I'm not proud of, or I don't want to put something out that I'm like, okay, I know this is my best that I could give to it. So I did small town for two series. So I think it was like 11 books. I did it. And I wrote those in 2 or 3 years. So I was like small town, small town, small town, small town. And then I was started writing a new book and I just like could not. I had half of it done and I was like, this just isn't, it's not working. I know I had everything plotted, but I knew it wasn't right. Like something in here isn't right. And I woke up one morning and I had this like idea for a prologue and I voiced my assistant and I was like, I'm writing this book. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I know it's totally way off of what I normally write, but I have this idea and I'm going to see if I can keep going with it. And so that kind of put me into more mafia. I think I just needed something different. And so I just write what I feel or I'm an emotional writer, I guess. I have to be in it to love it and put it out there. But it is hard. And I know business side, it's not the best for branding, but like I'd rather be off a little bit on branding than put a book out that I don't love.
Yeah. I love the honesty in that answer too, because there is no right or wrong in this industry. Like you are a creative, and I love that you write really what is coming from the heart and what you just really feel passionate about. I wonder, did you write that book so quickly? Because what I often hear is those passion projects when we're having a bit of a palate cleanser. People are like, it's weird. I just like wrote it like that and I published it and went boom. And I was so shocked. Was that a similar experience for you?
Yeah, it was because yeah. And so I was like, oh, I'm so ready to write book two when that one was finished. So it's like, this is where my heart is right now. I plan to go back to small town when I probably finish up this series, or if I'm just feeling small town, I might go back to there too, because I do have a spinoff of the small town that I am working on. That's the book that I kind of set aside for a while. So I know I'll go back to it. It's just when I feel like my brain is ready to go back to it.
Are you very trope heavy as well? When you're going into a book, do you already know the tropes that you plan on having in the book?
Most of the time, yes. I'm a big enemies to lovers. That is, if I can do enemies to lovers, I'll take it. But I normally know what the trope is, what kind of the storyline of what is, oh my gosh, this is, a way to bring readers over here. And so yeah, I normally know what my tropes are. Sometimes it changes, but normally that is like the one definite that I know.
Because, I stalked you a little bit because it's what I do best here. Because you're a TikTok queen. You do really well on TikTok as well. And one thing that I've really noticed with authors who really excel at TikTok is they really have an exceptional way of thinking of marketing. They really understand how to get the hooks. As you were saying, book one's super important. Grabbing the hooks, knowing the tropes. And often I find that you usually do know well, not exactly what you're going to write, but as in the tropes, because you're already thinking, how can I advertise this? How can I market it? And it's a really impressive way of thinking. I certainly don't think like that. And I find it really admirable, to be honest. So that's why I was curious as to whether you were trope heavy.
Oh, thank you.
There was something that you said before that I do want to touch on, and it's the word pressure. So it can be overwhelming. And one, like with pressure as well, we can also have burnout. And so I'm kind of curious as to whether you've experienced any type of debilitating pressure or you've reached burnout. And what are some of the conversations that you have with yourself to sort of give yourself confidence or to overcome those obstacles as well?
So last year I had burnout bad. I released one book last year. Versus the prior two, I released three. And I think I had hit the point where my brain was exhausted and it said, you need a break. So I didn't set a pre-order for that book that I released that year until I think the month before it released because I knew I didn't want to cancel a release because I had already technically set aside the small town that I was supposed to. And so I gave myself time and I was like, I'm not going to give myself a huge deadline. If I release one book this year, then I'll only release one book this year. So I went from having really, really busy years to last year just releasing one book that entire year. So I think burnout is real. And I think sometimes you really need to just give your brain a break and kind of read some or figure out, how you can get back into that writing stage. But yeah, I think last year was my burnout slash you need to kind of take a break year
Yeah.
because there is a lot of pressure to release, release, release. And sometimes, I mean, it's hard to, I mean, we're only one person to release and come up with that many stories.
Thank you for your honesty on that too, because I really advocate that we have this discussion on here because I think there is such a pressure just across the board, no matter what genre you are, to rapid release. And that doesn't work for everyone. For those who it does, that's fantastic. But we really do have to focus on our mind, body, soul at this point as well, especially now that there are so many elements, including social media. I feel like social media can be very exhausting for some people as well. So, kind of choosing your
Oh, yeah.
battles and prioritizing yourself.
Yeah. Social media, I think, is a huge one because we're not only writing now, we are basically almost becoming influencers sometimes in a sense that you have to create not only your book and your cover, but you also have to you're creating almost all of your marketing unless you hire it out.
Let's talk social media then, because you are fantastic. You are a queen at it. And I am kind of curious as to what your schedule looks like or what your approach is when tackling social media. And probably specifically TikTok as well, because you have well over 200,000 followers on that. And I imagine that also adds pressure to the type of videos that you want to be posting on there as well.
It does. And I wish I had a very structured plan to tell you, but sometimes I'll go like a month without posting. And then sometimes I'll go and post 2 or 3 times a day. So it really depends. I think with the burnout with my writing, I didn't post as much on social media during that time as well, just because I was giving myself a break. But yeah, I really wish I had oh yeah, I post 3 times a day at this time. And because some people, they really have, I mean, they're very organized with it. But me, I'm just, okay, I guess I'll post a TikTok and I just post when I feel like it and don't when I don't feel like it. So I don't have too much of a secret then. Kind of what I had said before. The biggest thing is your hooks. You know, when people scroll through, they want to see what is going to like capture them. So I feel like if I were made a video that was like, hey, look at my book, a lot of people aren't going to stop. But if I was like, hey, I slept with my boss, then people are going to be like, okay, I want to hear more about this. So I think that helps too. Just having that type of thing that really grabs people to stop and read your book or watch your video.
And you repurpose these onto your reels on Instagram as well, don't you?
Yeah. Mhm. Not all the time, but I try to the majority of the time. I think Reels has started to kind of push more sales, but I think TikTok does do a little bit better than Reels.
How do you go with comments? Because when you are getting, viral videos, which is awesome, it also can sometimes have a really negative impact as well. You can get the trolls coming on or just really rude, inappropriate comments. How did you go with dealing with that initially? I imagine now it's just block and delete, but that can be quite intense initially when you're receiving that. Did you have a similar experience like that?
So I do get them. Normally I think it depends on what mood I'm into because if I'm like, okay, I'm in the mood to say something back, then I will reply with something snarky. But a lot of times I either just ignore it or I delete it. And or sometimes somebody will say something snarky back in the comments for me. So I'm like, okay. I didn't have to say anything. Thank you. So, but yeah, I feel like I get more crappy comments on Reels than I do on TikTok. TikTok, I feel like is more accepting sometimes than Reels. I feel like you have more of maybe your trolls, or if it hits on the wrong side of Reels, and you get people that definitely are not going to read your book. And but with comments, I'm kind of just like, sure, whatever. Thanks for giving me the interaction that TikTok is going to push it more. So thank you.
There's a positive to it.
Yeah.
So, what then do you do? I mean, I guess we're in prime time at the moment. When you have an upcoming release, what are sort of the three things that you need to have in place? Are you doing Amazon and Facebook ads, social media, newsletter? What are the things that you really focus on right before release?
So I'm running Amazon ads and newsletters. So I have all my newsletters. Went to other authors and, hey, do you want to swap with me? I'll do like an exclusive newsletter with you. So I did do that. And I think just having your post and everything ready. I know I'm going to post some TikToks, so I've been brainstorming on what I'm going to do with that. But yeah, I really think now I have a checklist, or my assistant, because she is like the checklist person, but of us making sure that we hit everything that needs to be done for each release. And so, yeah, those are kind of the three things: is ads, your newsletters, and then just making sure all of your posts are ready. Because at that point, the book is written, your cover, all of that. So by the time release day, all that work is done. And now it's marketing.
Yeah. And that can be a completely different beast in itself as well, because I find release week when you're really like you're posting, you're like, oh, this really worked or this didn't, and then you're responding to readers and you're getting all the comments. It's exhausting. Do you have anything in place for yourself? What I am really enjoying about you too is like what I'm noticing is you really do prioritize yourself. I feel like after you've been burnt out last year, like, okay, I need to really put things in place. It's okay if I don't post every day. I'm not doing social media every day. I'm glad you've put those boundaries in place. So, is there anything that you put in place on release week, or are you just like anything goes? I'm going to push really hard because this is important to me, and then you take some time for yourself after the fact?
I think it depends on the release. So, my last release, which was the last book in the series, I was very chill about it. I was, man, my book's released. I'm gonna do some ads. I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna stress too much. So I think it depends on what type of book it is. With this one, it's like, okay, this is a new series. So I really wanna push it. So I think I'm definitely doing more marketing and pushing this more than what maybe I pushed my last release. And things have gotten harder too. You're having to do more ads. Like I got on TikTok. I say that my TikTok, I do well on TikTok because of timing. I got lucky with timing. I got on there really before book talk became a big thing. And so I was kind of an earlier one on there. And I think that is why I done so well on TikTok. It's really just luck. I think luck that my timing was right, and then I do try to hook people, but that has changed a lot too because it was a lot easier to get hundreds of thousands or millions of views in TikTok 2, 3 years ago. I didn't really run ads at all. Like I did very minimal when I had books coming out, but I knew that that would eventually change with TikTok doing ads and having you pay and do stuff for that. So I'm definitely doing more Amazon ads, Facebook, stuff like that, that I didn't do as much in my prior books with this one, just because, like I was saying, everything changes constantly. So you can depend on one thing and be like, okay, this isn't working anymore. So now I need to find this new way that I hope is going to work.
Do you delegate your advertising or do you do it yourself?
So I have someone who's doing my Amazon ads. This is my first time having somebody do my Amazon ads, but it's like I stink at Amazon ads. Like they are not my friends, not my thing. So I'm just gonna have somebody else do them. So I do that. I do all my TikToks, my Instagrams, all of that myself. I am with a PR company, so they do a lot of stuff with that. I am doing PR boxes for this release, which is something new that I've never really done before. So I'm hoping that goes well. It's been really fun getting everything together for it and like brainstorming of what to put in the boxes. But so luckily I do have help with they did all of the boxes. So I wasn't stressing over making tons of PR boxes. And my PA helps with most of my posting. She helps with some of the graphics. So luckily I have a pretty good team of people that kind of help me, or not kind of help me a lot, where it's not just all on me.
And I think it's important when you do reach a point in your career, because initially we don't necessarily have the budget for that or the resources. We don't necessarily know who's the best person to hire. So I think once you set those things in place and you figure out your strengths and your weaknesses and you delegate that, it removes a huge amount of pressure off you as well. You're probably so like glad you're not doing those Amazon ads.
Oh my gosh, I know. Like that is the one thing. They're because they're constantly changing just as much too. Facebook and Amazon. And it's like just when I think that I'm learning it, they switch it up and the whole interface is different. And I'm like, okay, this is not for me. I'll go write a book and you guys can kind of do that. So it is nice. And I know it's probably hard for a lot of other authors. Like it is expensive. You do have to have a lot of resources and able to get help. So a lot of newer authors are not only going into a whole new world of trying to figure out publishing and how it works, they're also not getting the same help that a lot of authors who've been doing it for a long time are.
And the good thing is that there are lots of groups like, depending obviously what platform you're on, but I know, for example, there's heaps of great groups on Facebook, for example,
Mhm.
for all different stages of people's career, and everyone always has great advice and resources. So if somebody is feeling a little bit unsure, I would definitely recommend checking out a couple of those and just introducing yourself as well. I feel like that's a really good start. I'm going to ask a really tricky one for you. It's a bit of a loaded question, but KU versus wide. We love this question. It is a tricky one because everything works differently for every author. So I'm kind of curious as to what led you to choose one over the other.
So I was KU for years. Once I started KU, I was in KU, I think 2018 or 2019. I had talked to another author who was in KU, and sometimes KU can be a struggle. And she was kind of just talking about how her sales have changed significantly since she moved from KU into going wide. And so I was like, okay, I'll try it. And I was wide for, I think I went back to KU. I've kind of gone in and out, but I was wide until I think 2022, like wide, always wide. And then I switched over. I think I did one series. I switched over to KU and then started putting more of my books in there. So I've been both. I know when I was, I'd say 2018 to 2021, 22, wide was great. Wide, I loved wide. You could do a freebie, go to BookBub, and that would help your entire read through of a series. But just like everything changes, a lot of people started migrating to KU and people are reading faster. And so when I would look at my KU of when these books were in KU or when they were in wide, I was seeing that the trend was going back, to KU. So I moved my books over to KU. I don't want to say I'll always be KU, but I've been there for about a year now, I think. I've been all in KU. So I think it depends. I think if you're a new author, definitely do KU because nobody's really read your book before. And some people might not want to pay $5 on an author they've never read before. So they'll download it, KU. So I think, yeah, it's a very everybody opinionated
Yeah.
question. Everyone has their own opinions on that. And I've gone back and forth too. I've been, oh my gosh, I not KU. And then I'm always wide. And then I've kind of gone back. So I think it just really depends on looking at your numbers and seeing whether you're doing. And I always say, try it. If you feel like you're on the fence and your KU numbers are falling and you have a good backlist, the biggest thing I think with wide is your backlist. Don't go wide if you have 3 books because you're not going to get that read through. The wide markets, they read through. They will read from book 1 to book 6 pretty heavily. And so you want that. So if you are wide, I always say do a freebie, get a book club, you'll get that read through. But it is a little harder now than what it used to be.
I love your adaptability as well. So, and this is why I specifically wanted to ask the KU versus wide because I could see that you had bounced a little. And I was kind of curious as to what led you into those decisions. And I really appreciate the fact that you just really analyze it. Like you take a step back because we as authors can get very emotionally charged by the situation, especially when you see sales declining. For some of us, this is full-time income, or we're trying to make the dream come alive and become a full-time author. And when you see sales dropping, you stress because realistically, you're the only person who's in control of this. So I think it's really like it is a very good lesson to learn as well that sometimes you do have to go back, even if you say swore off Amazon for whatever reason, that's okay. But sometimes maybe we just have to go, but it's 3 years later now. Like maybe I do have to shift and try. And if it doesn't work, then you tried. Um, yeah, so I love how adaptable you are. Like this whole interview, that's all I'm hearing, and I'm just like, yes.
You always have to change.
Talking about change, covers, another trend. Covers change all the time. What you expect, you want the man cover and then you want the discreet cover, and it's really hard to keep up with. So, what advice do you have for authors when it comes to trying to find the right theme or the right style to the cover that they're after? And I would love to talk about limited editions as well because you have some stunning covers.
Ah, thanks. Covers, yeah, they're hard. My best selling small town series, they have had 3 different covers and then special edition too. The first set of covers was bare chested man because that is what that is what everybody needed or everybody wanted. And as I was getting into like TikTok and making videos, I would get a lot of comments that are like, "Oh, this sounds good. Hate the cover." And I'm like, man, like, but that's what it is. Like now people don't like the bare chested covers as much. So I did illustrated covers for a while because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm loving illustrated. And so I did that for a while. Then I had a whole set of new guy covers, did that for a while, went back to my illustrated covers, and that's where I'm now. So I think kind of the same thing. I look at numbers. I'm like, okay, I sold more paperbacks when this cover was there, or I sold more, ebooks when this cover. So I think the biggest thing is to just look at your sales and look at your page reads and see what is doing better. And I have special edition or non people on almost every book that I have. So I have an alternative for people that don't like the guy covers. But yeah, I mean, it almost is a basically you have to have if you're going to do a guy cover an alternative or discrete cover with it now. It's almost like 100% necessity. That's part of your like when I book my cover, I book guy cover and special edition cover both at the same time because I know I'm going to I'm gonna have to have both.
You have many accolades. And so, like I said, as we came on, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, number one Amazon, number one Apple, which all of these are so incredible. And I'm kind of curious for you, what has been the most sentimental moment where you're like, wow, I'm a real author. Like, I've really made it.
I'm still at that point where I'm like, am I? I think that when I first went wide, I was like, one of these days I want to hit USA Today. That's my thing. But I don't know if it'll ever happen. But that was my goal, at least one time to hit it solo. And so I did, and I was like, oh wow, that first time it's so exciting. And it's like you have this goal that you've had for so long that you never thought was really achievable. Because when you talk to people about numbers and people that have hit, you're looking at this is how much you need to hit, and then you're looking at your sales and you're like, okay, I don't know if that's like reality for me, if that's going to happen. So I think that definitely when I hit that, that was really exciting. When I hit Wall Street, though, I hadn't expected it. It wasn't something that I was looking at. I wasn't checking numbers really for it. And I didn't even know that I'd hit until another author messaged me, and she said, congrats on hitting Wall Street Journal. And I was like, what? And so she had sent me a picture of it, and I was like two down from Stephen King, and I was, what is life right now? So I think that was a really big one, because it was something that I hadn't, like, I knew, okay, I think I'm pulling these numbers, fingers crossed, but I think I'm gonna hit this with, listing USA Today. But Wall Street was just out of nowhere. And so I think both of them are, I think, big achievements. And I'm so grateful that I've hit any of them. But that one was more of just you didn't really look at numbers and didn't expect it. And then it's kind of a surprise for you.
How old were you? Because, like, I'm not going to ask your age, but also you seem younger. And I'm thinking, I'm back there. I feel like we're probably around the same age. So I'm like, was it when you were a teenager that you knew that you wanted to be a writer?
So I don't know. I think when you are a teenager, you kind of go through all of the different, like, oh, I want to be this or I want to be this. It's always been oh my gosh, one of these days, it's your dream, but how hard when you look up how hard it is to be an author back then. Like, oh, X percentage, such a low percentage of people that got picked up by agents. People queried 100 agents. So, it's kind of, is this really realistic? Am I that great of a writer at this age? But I was always a huge reader. Like, I consumed books like crazy, and romance was my favorite to read. So I think it was always one of these days I'm going to write a book, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to sell books to where it's like, okay, now I am selling books. So it's a dream that you didn't think would happen, but then it does kind of happen. So it's exciting, and sometimes it's a little surreal too.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, was just like looking back when you have those moments, you're like, wow, this is actually my life. Like, this is incredible. So
Yeah.
I love these. I live for the dream. So I'm just like, yay, I love this.
And going back to covers, because I was stalking you too, your guys' covers, they are gorgeous. I was looking, and I know, like the ones that you have with a TL, I've always been like, oh my gosh, I'm always commenting, like, your covers are so pretty. And I was looking at your guys's, and they're stunning,
Well, thank you so
like
much.
gorgeous.
Thank you. I'll let her know as well. I mean, yeah, she's amazing. She's honestly, so anyone who hasn't obviously checked out TL Smith, please do. Um, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you have great covers for both of like your, that you've covered and yours. You have stunning covers.
Stop it. Did we just become best friends?
Oh, covers are what got us.
I know, that's why immediately I was like, tell me more about limited edition, because this is the time that we're in. Limited edition wasn't a thing, 4 or 5 years ago. And now we're all frothing at the mouth for them. Like it's
Yeah.
really shifted completely.
And then now you have the sprayed edges, and then you have the foil, and then you have, and so you're trying to learn that while you're also trying to write a book. And it's like, oh my gosh, I love all of this stuff, but I don't know if I have time to do all of this stuff. And so some book boxes, they're really nice because they do a lot of the work for you. And you can just be like, okay, here's my manuscript, do as you please. So that's nice too, where you don't have to put as much work into it.
I actually wouldn't mind talking about then when it comes to limited editions for those who may have not stepped into it. The first thing I would always recommend, I mean, and everyone is different, but just making sure that you actually have the budget for it, and you have the demand there as well from your readers, because there's nothing more disappointing than, say, if you've spent thousands of dollars on 400 copies and have them sitting there, that's really upsetting. So, what is some of the advice that you have when first dipping the toe in limited editions when it comes to foils and sprayed edges and all the good stuff?
So if I were newer with a very limited budget, there's so many kind of like how you mentioned author groups. There's so many groups on Facebook of pre-made special editions, and to where you're not paying hundreds of dollars, to some, a lot of times more to get a special edition made. So a lot of times you can go into these groups and these designers post their pre-mades, and you can buy one of theirs for a lot cheaper. So I'm always like, if you have a smaller budget, go and find these groups. There are a lot of groups on here, and their covers, they have nice covers. And a lot of times, I mean, I think a few of mine I've been in groups, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is stunning. And I didn't even have to spend all this time giving ideas and stuff. So I would definitely say if your budget is smaller, look in those groups first and see if they have anything that has something that matches your story. And then as you maybe sell more and you start having more books come out, then you can get more of a custom one. But if you have a smaller budget, I'd start maybe pre-made, just going kind of the simple route, and then just kind of making your way up from there. Also, selling them on your website, I think, is a big one, because sometimes Amazon paperbacks are harder to sell when I don't know, so I think selling them on your website is a big thing too.
What have you found to be the most surprising thing in this industry?
I think the people that you meet, and just, you meet people from all over the world and in different states, and then you form these super close relationships with people that live, across the country that you would have never known if you wouldn't have written this book. So I think that is the biggest thing, just having all these, people that now from everywhere that you never thought, oh, I'd have a close friend here. So I think that's a big one.
Yeah, I completely agree with it. And it's, you find your tribe, you find your I'm gonna say nerdy friends because we're all authors, we're all nerds, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I've really made it in life.
Yeah. And they understand, and you can bounce ideas off of them, and they know, oh my gosh, I'm on a deadline right now. I've drank 5 coffees and I haven't slept in 27 hours. And they are like, yeah, I know. Let me tell you and like talk you through this. You got this. And so I think them understanding, like, yeah, we've all been there. We know the stress of this. So I think that helps a lot too, that you're not by yourself in all of this madness, to have somebody to talk you through it sometimes.
This is one of my favorite questions to ask. What is the dream for you? The bigger, the better. What are you chasing for your career?
Um, no, I think everyone's is for a movie, to get a movie deal. I think that is like like I've made it, I have a movie. But I think, and also not running out of stories. I don't know if that's exactly my dream or more of my nightmare, but I want to dream that I won't run out of stories, because as you write, like your first book, I think is the easiest because you've had this story in your head for so long and you're ready to get it out there. And so I think the first couple of books are easy because you wanted to write this book for so long. But after you have, 15, 20 books, you really have to dig in your brain and really brainstorm to say, okay, I know I need to write something different. And so I need to have all of this different dialogue and this different storyline and this different plot twist. So, and I've told people, I'm like, my biggest, I guess, dream or my biggest goal is to not run out of stories to write. And for my brain to just be like, okay, we're done. I have no more stories for you.
I think that's all our like reader sphere. We're just like, please don't ever stop.
I know.
I have a segment called Speed Dating with an author. So I've lit a candle, I've created ambience, but basically what it is four rapid questions. Are you ready?
I am.
What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
When I was, I'd say like 10, maybe we would ride our bikes to like the pool. And so I had my bicycle and I had a towel, like my towel. And we were crossing a street and there was traffic like at the stoplight and we were crossing and my towel got stuck in like the part between like your wheel and something and my towel got stuck there. So I'm on my bike and my bike completely flips over in front of everyone. This is mortifying. And then people started getting out of their cars and making sure I was okay. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just like got on my bike and I was like, I'm good. So that's probably one of those like really charity moments that I've had.
I,
Although I've had a lot of clumsy moments, but that's one that's off the top of my head.
how old did you say you were?
I think I was like 10.
Okay.
And I was like riding my bike to the pool and I don't know why I thought I could just have my towel chilling on the handlebars.
I love that they were asking if you were okay opposed to like honking or something.
I'm trying to remember now, maybe if some did honk, because I think I was too embarrassed to notice everyone's like what they were doing. But I don't think anyone honked at me. There'd probably be some bad karma.
Yeah, no, it's fine. As long as you were okay and you sort of moved away from that.
I survived.
Have you ever ridden a bike after that out of curiosity?
Yes, I did, but not with a beach towel, I don't think, because that scarred me for life.
What are the three words that best describe you?
So I think creative, loyal, and I don't know, I think maybe clumsy, or since we just talked about it, but I would say, I don't know, this is two words, but I'm a huge animal person. So pet mom,
Yeah.
maybe something. I know that's two words, but grouped into those three, I'd say those are kind of it.
What is the song that best describes you?
I would say they're like two sides. If you're like, okay, the fun charity, the exciting ones, like if you watch my TikTok sometimes, that's like more of maybe like a Little John song. But if you're like, okay, the other side of me, I would say, I'm trying to think of what I have. My Tears Ricochet by Taylor Swift is one of my playing all the time songs lately. So I think it depends on kind of like with my writing. I have my small town, which is kind of emotional, which is like this over here. And then I have my mafia, which is like a whole different side of me.
I love that you're just like, there's two sides. Which side will you get today? What, or should I say, who has been your favorite character to write and why?
So I think that it was Christian and Gorgeous Monster, kind of like how we talked about that I was stuck in a rut, kind of like, okay, I've written Small Town and I feel like I'm stuck. And then I woke up one morning and I got this idea. And so it was that book or that character that kind of took me into a whole new world that I'm in right now. So I think a lot of my heroes I love, but I think that just because he kind of was like a sign that, hey, you don't just have to stay here. You can go here and your readers will follow you. And they will read Mafia too. And this will help you kind of get out of the slump that you're in right now. So I'd say he is probably one of my favorites just because he kind of like helps me climb out of my burnout hole.
Well, then we love him very much.
Yes.
I have had so much fun. Thank you for coming on today and let us know what we need to be on the lookout for. And most importantly, where do we find you?
So I am on Insta, TikTok. My handles are Charity Ferrell or at Charity Ferrell on pretty much everything, but I'm more active on Instagram and TikTok, and then in my reader group, which is Charity Ferrell Reader Group, which is a Facebook group that is just me and my readers where we all hang out and I give them all of the information, the new covers, they see it first and everything. So those are like my three main places that I'm active in.
Amazing. And new release. What, 3 hours now?
Yes, 3 hours.
I hope you can sleep tonight.
I was talking to my assistant and I was like, yeah, I'll be up by it's midnight because I'm waiting on the paperbacks with Amazon because they're doing that new thing where you can have your book up to where it doesn't go live early, but you can still order paperbacks. And so I was like, yeah, I'll be up when it goes live at 12 or 1.
Happy release. Congratulations. Well, we're going to love you and leave you guys, but we'll see you in a little bit. Bye.
Thanks for having me.